Hey ladies, welcome back to the show. On today's episode, we are going to talk about something that maybe you haven't heard about that is beneficial for women's health, especially in the life cycle of women. But in particular for this episode, we are going to talk about for women over 40. We are going to talk about creatine. If you think creatine is for gym bros and protein shakes, you're not alone. Most women have never considered the use of creatine, but there's more recent research that closes that gap and can show and has shown some of the most compelling research and evidence that perhaps you can supplement with creatine and you will see some effects in your health. I'm Trisha, a registered dietitian who works with women navigating the hormonal and lifestyle changes of midlife. In this podcast episode, we are going to walk through what creatine actually does, what some of the double-blind randomized controlled trials show, where the evidence is still developing, and then if you decide that it's something that you would want to navigate and put in your toolbox, what that looks like and how to use it practically. Welcome to the Whole Health Empowerment Project podcast. This show is for women over 40 who are trying to create balance in their life when it comes to food, body, self-care, and wellness. You struggle to put yourself first, to maintain consistency when something isn't perfect, or maybe you feel like you don't have enough time or willpower to achieve the goals you desire. I'm your host, Trisha Stefankowitz, registered dietitian, nutritionist. I've worked with women like you achieve their goals by focusing on the next best step, no matter how messy, and meeting you where you are right now. In this show, you'll learn practical information, actionable strategies, and mindset tweaks so that you can feel healthier, more comfortable in your body, and make choices that work for your life. Come join me in failing forward, one imperfect step at a time, into the journey of health, wellness, and self-care. Welcome to your new project. First, let's talk about what creatine actually is. You may have heard about creatine. Men have been using it for years and had been the primary consumer of creatine. Earlier, when creatine was being researched, it was being researched for its athletic performance. And so if we were talking about women, it was in regards to athletic performance in women and athletic performance mainly in men. Most recently, creatine has gotten press for its research that accounted for hormonal fluctuations, aging, and cognition in women that had previously not been included in the earlier research. So if you've heard about creatine, my guess is it's because of some of the more important evidence that's been come and moving forward over the last 2 decades. Creatine is not a drug. It is not a hormone. It is a compound that your body makes naturally from amino acids, 3 in particular, arginine, glycine, and methionine, and primarily in your liver and kidneys. You also get small amounts of creatine from food, mainly red meat and fish. About 95% of creatine in your body is stored in your muscles. That's why you hear about it in research related to performance and muscle strength. The rest of the creatine lives in your heart and other tissues. The primary job of creatine is to help your cells regenerate ATP, which is your body's main energy currency. So everything that you eat always comes down to ATP, which is your energy source, your body's main energy currency. When your cells need a really quick blast of energy, creatine is what makes that energy possible. But some of the more emerging research over the past 2 decades about creatine has been focused on women, and particularly women over 40. And what the research shows is that after the age of 40, your natural creatine stores start declining. Muscle mass also decreases during that time, and your dietary intake of creatine often drops as well. And so the overall pool of creatine that you have in your muscles and that you have in your body shrinks. Supplementation replenishes that pool that is fading and that's shrinking. And the downstream effects of having full creatine stores help with muscle, bone, and brain in ways that matter specifically for women in midlife. So in midlife, the amount of creatine that we are eating and the amount that we have in our body is shrinking. And so what creatine has been shown to do is that we think it's able to replenish those stores so that you can have an improvement in muscle, bone, and brain health, which matters more significantly in middle age, because this is a time when we start to have a decline in estrogen, and that is often exacerbated. That pool shrinks and it's making everything worse. So we've talked about that more research is being spent on creatine in pre and postmenopausal women. So creatine and muscle mass after 40 is something that is being studied. Here's where the evidence is the strongest and most consistent when it comes to creatine. After the age of 40, women lose muscle at roughly 3 to 5% per decade. This rate accelerates significantly after menopause. Why is that? Because you're losing estrogen, or your estrogen is in decline. Estrogen is muscle protective. So when you have less estrogen, the decline in your muscle starts to accelerate. This process is called sarcopenia. So I don't know if you've ever seen people that they might be skinny, but they don't have a lot of muscle mass. This is called sarcopenia. It's typically called age-related sarcopenia because as you age, there's a decrease in muscle loss. With that loss is the loss of strength and function that starts to accelerate in loss as you go closer to 60. And how this usually presents itself is that people may have trouble balancing, climbing the stairs, and just overall your strength is less. What we know is that with sarcopenia, there are real consequences beyond aesthetics. So even though you may weigh the same, but you have less muscle mass, we know that with this process of muscle loss, there is this slower metabolism, reduced strength for your everyday activities, and a higher risk of falls and fractures. And by doing that, it's also harder for you to manage your body weight because you have less muscle mass. In a 2021 review published in the Journal of International Society of Sports Nutrition, there was evidence that examined the existing evidence on creatine specifically in women. And what that study showed was that creatine is safe and effective for most healthy women with notable benefits for muscle mass and strength. There's also some studies that show that there's an increased lean tissue mass in older women compared to placebo, which was clinically significant. More muscle means a higher resting metabolic rate. It means better blood sugar regulation. It means more strength for the life that you want to live. With muscle, it's not vanity. I think we have to look at it as a way that you can live longer. So it's more associated for longevity and being able to do the things that you want to do as you age and not be debilitated by things that you can't do. We know that creatine is also associated with an improvement in bone density. And this is the benefit that I think might be the most underappreciated and where the research is pretty exciting. Women, as we age, can lose up to 20% of our bone density in the first 5 to 7 years after menopause. Once significant bone density is lost, it does not fully come back. So prevention is really the intervention here. And this is where some people will do HRT and things like that to help with estrogen so that they can have that cardioprotective benefit of bone density. There was a double-blind randomized placebo study in 2021 that looked at postmenopausal women with sarcopenia, so less muscle mass, and measured creatine's effects on body composition. And what they can see is that creatine supported the energy demands of the osteoblast, so the cells responsible for building new bone. Creatine was able to help that new bone become possible. And when those cells have more energy in the form of ATP, when it was available, they were able to function more effectively. And what was even more effective, if they were able to supplement creatine with weight bearing and resistance exercise, they together helped stimulate bone remodeling. And so there's a suggestion that creatine appears to offer an additive benefit here. So besides just doing weight training, creatine will give the body extra energy it needs for the osteoblast to do what they need to do so that you would have an improvement in your bone health. This does not replace calcium and vitamin D, however, which are foundational. This shows that creatine can be a meaningful addition to the calcium and vitamin D, particularly for women who are already doing some form of strength training or weight-bearing activity. Creatine will help. So this would be creatine as an extra tool to put in your toolbox. One of the reasons that I started taking creatine was this improvement in brain health that was seen, and where some of the research here is pretty exciting. Creatine and brain health, especially in perimenopause, is where there's a lot of buzz, and that might be where you're hearing about it. And this is where I want to be the most careful about what the research shows versus what people are claiming it shows. During menopause, when estrogen is fluctuating and sleep is disruptive, this is perimenopause or menopause, the brain's energy metabolism is genuinely affected. That is part of why brain fog, word-finding difficulties, and memory lapses are so common during this transition. There are measurable changes in brain structure and energy metabolism during perimenopause. And this is not just fatigue or stress. There's real things happening. Creatine supports brain energy metabolism the same way it supports muscle by helping cells regenerate ATP. Remember, ATP is the body's main energy source. And there were 23 randomized controlled trials published in nutrition reviews that found that creatine supplementation improves memory in older adults compared to the placebo, with effects driven by increased creatine stores in the brain and improved mitochondrial function. So that essentially means that you may have a deficit of ATP, and creatine is allowing it to be accessible for when the brain needs it, so that it has an improvement in your brain stores. There's creatine that's available there. There was a more recent study in 2025 that measured 2 doses of creatine. One was 750 milligrams per day, and the other dose was 1,500 milligrams a day, a combination of those formulas or a placebo for 8 weeks. The medium dose group showed a statistically significant improvement in reaction time compared to placebo. Then this group also showed a trend toward reduced mood swing severity, though the finding did not reach the full statistical significance. Here's the honest caveat here, that the study tested around 60 different cognitive outcomes and biomarkers. Only 2 or 3 showed significant improvement. With that many outcomes tested, some will appear significant by chance. And so the sample size was pretty small in this study. So it just shows that there's some promising research when it comes to like brain health, when it comes to changes in mood. My clinical recommendation is that you address your known drivers of brain fog first. And so this could be making sure that your sleep quality is improved, that you have your thyroid function test measured, your iron levels, your B12, your blood sugar stability. And if those are covered and cognitive symptoms likely persist, creatine is a low risk, affordable option worth trying. The evidence is early, but the safety profile is pretty strong, which is why I take creatine. And I do it for the muscle, the bone strength, and also for this, hopefully, that there is some improvement in my brain function and decrease in brain fog. Now, there are two myths that are associated and that are worth addressing when it comes to creatine. Myth number one is that creatine causes weight gain. Creatine does cause 1 to 2 kilograms of intracellular water retention in the first few weeks. So you will see maybe an increase in swelling or bloat. Not the puffy bloating kind, but you will see that your number, if you're weighing yourself, will go up on the scale, probably like 1 or 2 kilos, or maybe 2 to 4 pounds. And this is a sign that the creatine is working. It is not fat. And that number on the scale will stabilize within a few weeks. And then most women report that the functional benefits, including more energy, better strength, faster recovery, possible decrease in brain fog, they all become apparent around that same time. And I feel like I've been taking it for about a year or two, and I don't notice any difference in terms of my weight. I think at the beginning there was a little bit. And as long as you expect it, then you're not going to panic and be like, oh my gosh, my weight is going up, because it's part of the process as you're having those intracellular, extracellular shifts that are happening. Myth number two is that creatine damages your kidneys. There has been no well-designed study that has demonstrated kidney damage from creatine supplementation in healthy individuals at standard doses. The research on this is consistent. If you have existing kidney disease or compromised kidney function, this is when I would talk to your doctor about starting any supplement. For healthy women, this is not a documented concern. So if you are one of my dialysis patients, or you have acute kidney injury or any stage of CKD between 1 and 5, this is where I would be careful in terms of any supplement really, but creatine would be one of them as well. So now that we've talked about what creatine is, some of the benefits that it can have for you, and some of the myths surrounding creatine, let's talk about how to use it practically. When it comes to creatine, the form would be creatine monohydrate, not creatine HCl, not creatine ester, not any fancy proprietary blend. Creatine monohydrate is the form used in the vast majority of studies, is the most affordable, and is the most reliably absorbed. This is what I use. I don't use anything fancy. I use different brands depending on what's on sale. I will buy my creatine wherever I can find it. That is creatine monohydrate. I will use a teaspoon of creatine, which is equal to 5 grams. And I use it every day, and I put it in my tea. So if creatine is something that you want to start with creatine monohydrate. The dose here is 3 to 5 grams per day. When you're doing creatine, and a lot of those, when people are loading creatine, because they're going to go on and off creatine, or they're going to go up on dose, there could be a loading dose. But I think in this situation where you're going to take creatine every day, you probably don't need to have a loading phase. What's going to matter most here is that you're having consistency. Consistency matters far more than when you take it, or the specific time of day that you take it. You want to have it available so that your muscles, your bone, osteoblasts, your brain, anything that needs it is available to have it. So whether you have 3 grams per day or 5 grams per day, that is something, that is helpful for you to know. My sister takes a creatine in her gummy that has 3 grams per day. I take 5 grams a day of creatine monohydrate as a powder that I put in my tea. So that really is up to you. But I think knowing that you're taking some kind of creatine, that you're being consistent with it, is where it's most important. How do you supplement creatine? You can mix it in water. You can mix it in your coffee or your smoothie. It's tasteless. It dissolves well. But I would just make sure that you're taking it at the same time so that you can build some kind of habit around the idea of taking creatine. Again, I take 1 teaspoon. 1 teaspoon is equal to 5 grams per day. I take it in my hot tea every morning, and it's not like it goes right in. It's not like it doesn't go to the surface or anything. It dissolves very easily. And so it's very easily to take. So I usually keep it next to my tea bag so I remember to take it. The timeline here of when you'll see the benefit is that muscle and bone creatine stores begin rising within 1 to 2 weeks after you're taking it consistently. Cognitive benefits, if you do see cognitive benefits, are more typically reported after 4 to 8 weeks of consistent daily use. The cost of creatine is roughly between $15 and $25. It depends on how you get it and what you decide that you're going to have it in. But remember, you're going to do creatine monohydrate. I think to remember too that creatine is one of the most studied and affordable supplements that are out on the market, where I feel like there's a lot of other supplements that people take, but there's no research around it. Creatine is not one of those. And also when you're looking at creatine monohydrate, you can also look for the seal on the package where it says NSF, certified for sport or informed sport, where there is a third-party label. So an NSF is a third-party label. And that confirms that the product contains what it claims it contains and that it's free from contaminants. Because if you have something like that, the NSF like seal on it, well then if it says it has five grams of creatine in it, then it probably does. And it probably has less contaminants. So that's what I would look for. Of note, I wanted you to also know that you don't have to just get the packaging of the creatine monohydrate. You can also use it and get it in gummies, as my sister has. Again, her dose is 3 grams in her gummies. Mine is 5 in my powder. And they also offer now like on the go sticks, because the supplement market is probably like so happy that as women being the primary consumer of supplements, that there now is another supplement that women can use to help them or put in their toolbox. But this one is actually studied, where I feel like a lot of the supplements are not studied. This one actually has some research behind it. And so let's recap some of the creatine benefits. We know that it can be used to preserve muscle mass with subsequent improvement in strength, that there is shown improvement in bone health. It can help improve bone mineral density, especially when combined with resistance training. It has the potential to reduce fatigue by making more energy available in the cells that the cells can grab and use for energy. We know that there could also be a cognitive and mood improvement, but this varies for different people. It may also vary according to where you are in your cycle, but there is a benefit or a thought benefit in brain health and a mood stabilizer improvement as well. The bottom line here is that the evidence for creatine and muscle preservation in women over 40 is strong. The evidence for bone health is growing and supported by multi-year randomized trials. The evidence for cognitive function and brain health is promising and early, with the most specific research in perimenopausal women that was published in 2025. Creatine is not magic, and it is not a replacement for the foundation, which we already talked about. That foundation being making sure that you're getting adequate protein, resistance training, getting adequate sleep, and stress management. But for a supplement with this safety record, this research base, and this cost profile, it is one of the most overlooked tools available for women in midlife. As always, talk to your healthcare provider before starting any new supplement, especially if you have a pre-existing condition like any kind of kidney disease or take medications that could interfere with creatine. I thank you guys so much for listening today, and I look forward to seeing you next week. And if you think that someone could benefit from adding creatine to their life, make sure you share this episode with them. Thanks again. See you next week. Thanks so much for listening to this episode. If you found value in this podcast, please rate, review, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
Don't forget to share this episode with your friends. Together, we can take tiny, imperfect steps towards creating the whole health we desire and deserve. Don't forget to grab your freebie. You can find the link in your show notes or over at triciard.com. I'll see you back here next week.